ready to roll.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. There you go.
Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 15 and it's been 1 year since I last interviewed Ben Ark. He's the mastermind behind Nostr.com or Nostr.com. He is the CEO and he still owns the domain, even though I think he should sell it for like 1,000 Bitcoin. And he's also the creator of LNBits, alongside lots of our other hardware inventions that he made, from a candy dispenser. And what else did you make? Hardware wallets. It's called Bowser. It's really cool. You made a device that signs keys, so you can replace your, I guess it's like a hardware wallet for your Nostr keys. And you made a lot of cool stuff. And it's been 1 year since I interviewed you. I really want to find out what you've been up to and what else is new with your project.
Okay, I mean, I will have to correct you a little bit in that I didn't do all those things. I got the ball rolling on LNBits, and then thankfully we had lots of talented developers who piled in and then helped make it good. But then also with the hardware stuff as well, such as the hardware wallet and the Nostr signing device, that's really the work of Vladstan. So I got the project started, the Bowser hardware wallet started, but then Vladstan was the one who then perfected it and made it work properly. So I think I'm quite good at coming up with a proof of concept. But as a developer, I'm not the best. So I really do lean on my very talented peers. So a big shout out to them. Vladstan, Black Coffee, Tal, DNI, Fiat Jaff, all my talented friends who help make some of the stuff I started not, actually make it functional and work properly. So I mustn't take too much credit, even though I want to take all the credit, but I mustn't take too much credit. But that really is the power of like the community in which we are existing in Bitcoin. And in Nostr as well, is that if you make the effort to create something, or you have an idea for something, and you put a bit of effort into it, then even if you're not the best developer in the world, as long as you've made that initial effort, like people are willing to help. They're willing to make the thing you built better. And I think it's a good thing when you start a project, and a lot of free and open source developers struggle with this. You start a project, and then you just get out talented. And there's better talent. Like with LNBits, for example, now, if I go anywhere near core, my pull request takes a while to get in because it needs a lot of improvements before I can actually get it into LNBits core. But that's a good thing. Like, you don't want me committing to LNBits core. And we saw the same thing happen in Bitcoin generally, actually. I feel like the Gavin Andreessen of LNBits. Like, I'm no longer as useful as I once was. But that is the glorious thing about LNBits, actually, with our extension framework, is that we do make it possible for novice developers and developers who, aren't classically trained in developing to be able to create extensions. We try and make that process as friendly to everybody as we possibly can. So yeah, big shout out to all the actual talented developers who make things work properly.
You mentioned the name of Black Coffee, and I need to thank him for the fact that he agreed to list the Bitcoin Takeover magazine in the LNBits store. I guess you still sell that for about 20 euro or something, even less. He was able to get it for a very low cost, and I envy that, because basically that's what it costs me to print it and deliver it, and he's able to sell it for pretty good cost given that it's printed in the UK. So thank you, Black Coffee. Also, Vladstan. I think he is right now the only Romanian I want to interview on my show, and I should get him on because he's a very good developer and he's done some very interesting work with LNBits. And alongside all of these thank you notes, I want to ask you something which is more controversial, because since we spoke last year, there were this series of revelations regarding vulnerabilities and issues with Lightning Network. And it seems like the enthusiasm regarding Lightning has lowered. The number of channels is lower. The number of nodes is lower compared to last year. It doesn't seem to be the scaling solution. It was presented as such, and it seems to be only useful to maybe a few thousand users, but it's not really growing anymore. And I think it's due to, what's his name? Antoine Riard. He revealed something back in October or November about being able to exploit Lightning. And it seems like, I don't know, Lightning is no longer in the spotlight. There's Burak, who's presenting Arc, and now he is even at V2 of Arc, even though he hasn't launched V1 into production. And there's Drivechains, There are state chains, Mercury Layer. I'm not sure if you spoke with Nicholas Gregory and Tom Treverton. I had them on the show. Really nice guys. So I guess I spoke too much and I didn't ask a clear question. Do you still believe in the Lightning Network, and what else do you think is interesting out there?
Bidirectional payment channels for everyday payments and networks of bidirectional payment channels is the answer. The problem really is that nobody's really tackled scaling Lightning. When I went to the first Lightning hack day, Lightning had been online mainnet for like a couple of months. And there was always the understanding that in order for it to scale properly, we would need things like channel factories. But no one really worked on those problems and solving those problems because we had this synthetic low-fee environment, because not enough people are using Bitcoin on-chain. 5% of the work has been done to make Lightning functional. And already it far surpasses other payment networks such as Visa. 5%. We still need to do another 95% of the work. Bitcoiners love a panacea. They love a solution, which is the new thing which will just magically solve all of our problems. And the reality is, it's blood, sweat, and tears. Another 95% needs to be put into. So, like, for example, in LNBits, we can run LNBits on any Lightning node. And in order to manage that node, we were using RTL to ride the Lightning. The software is very big, and like it would crash our server when we tried to run it. So then we had to build our own node management solution into LNBits. It's crazy to me that after, 4 years or whatever, however long Lightning had been going for, that we had to build a node management solution. And then also, when we have this node management solution, we're like, okay, can we explore some interesting and clever ways of balancing channels? Using something like bolts, doing automatic swaps. Again, it's crazy to me that not enough people have been working on these things. So it's almost like, it's not really like, what can something like Lightning do for you? It's what can you do for Lightning? We need developers on the ground. We need people building stuff. It's still a new protocol. There hasn't been enough work done on channel factories. Like in that first Lightning hack day, that was like the cornerstone of the hack day was, currently, we need an on-chain transaction just to create one to open a channel, close a channel. But we will at some point have these things called channel factories. They're theoretically possible. But then there's a handful of people who actually work on this thing. Nobody cares about it because Lightning is good enough when we have low fees. So this is why I quite like ordinals, is that when the ordinal thing happened and then suddenly everybody's Lightning node became borked, you get all these amazing solutions come out the woodwork. You get the Bolt solution. You get people using Liquid in a way with Lightning Network to be able to balance channels, to send money in and out of their Lightning channels. You get people seriously talking about channel factory solutions again. So it's a misnomer and then also as well over the past year, there's some fairly influential sums of capital, where there's an incentive to FUD on Lightning. If you look at something like Ecash, for example, and it kind of annoys me because Ecash is a great technology and is very useful technology, but it's very tempting for the Ecash people to say, well, Lightning doesn't scale for the whole world, thus that everybody's going to be reliant upon a federation of Lightning Ecash mints, and that's how we're going to scale it for the rest of the world. And it's like, no, that's bollocks. We can have a Lightning node on everybody's phone. 7 billion people have smartphones. We just need to make channel curation easier. We need to make autopilot stuff easier. We need to do the other 95% of the work in order to make it easier for people to run this thing. And like you, I'm not against the idea of Drivechains. I think there's some things which needs to be fixed in Bitcoin first, such as the centralization of miners. But I do feel that Drivechains could offer a lot of solutions. And I still feel that, perhaps like Bitcoin on-chain, unless we get channel factories, or even with Arc, you can have channel factories with Arc, for example. With Drivechains, we could have an optimal layer which sits beneath Lightning. And so we're just organizing those protocol layers in the right way. But bidirectional payment channels, you don't want all your data stored forever. You don't want to, Bitcoin's whole thesis is trying to remove the trusted third party. So we don't want to like just then turn around and go, actually, trusted third parties are okay. And we just federate the trusted third parties. Like, no, it's why we have this ridiculous blockchain thing. It's why we have this very convoluted and complicated Lightning channel thing. It's because we're removing the trusted third party. So any proposal or solution which I find which anyone comes up with which requires a trusted third party, I'm instantly skeptical about, which is why I'm quite skeptical about the Ecash thing. I like Drivechains, but I do think that if we had Drivechains, we would probably just have a drive chain which is optimized for Lightning, and then people would end up using that for Lightning. But we basically we need higher fees. People, I mean, you look at it in general human society. It's something like, I mean, I know a bunch of Bitcoiners don't believe in climate change, doesn't exist, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But supposing climate change exists, which I believe it does, and it's a critical issue for humans, we're just not tackling it. We don't care. We just carry on with our old behaviors without a care in the world, knowing the majority of the scientific community, knowing that we're heading towards this precipice, this cliff edge. And people don't tackle problems until they're critical. Just the way humans work. And we don't tackle scaling till it's an issue. We don't tackle scaling Lightning Network properly until on-chain fees are critical and they're high. So to answer your question, it's unwarranted FUD in my opinion. Like there's not been enough work done on those things, on scaling Lightning.
Yeah, to further explain my argument, I have to present the advertisement for today's sponsor, Sideshift.ai, which is a company that allows you to swap between various currencies and also different types of Bitcoin. Basically, you can swap RBTC, which is Bitcoin locked on the rootstock sidechain, for BTC on the main chain, or the other way around. Or if someone offers to pay you in stable coins for whatever reason, you can swap those for BTC, no problem. And you don't need to sign up. It's just an interface where you send money, you receive your... It's just like... I'm not sure if I can mention Shapeshift, but it's fine. It's just like Shapeshift back in the day. So Sideshift.ai. But the point that I'm trying to make with Sideshift is that they removed Lightning. They had this function, which is like an atomic swap. Of course, they were in the middle. It was not a genuine atomic swap. You could swap LBTC for BTC or the other way around, but they decided to remove that because of lack of liquidity, and I guess it wasn't very popular. And on the other hand, they have Geo Boden, which is a meme coin on Solana that's supposed to make fun of Joe Biden. So it's very confusing for me. The fact that that one has more volume, supposedly, on their platform than Lightning Network.
That's interesting. I mean, like, in my experience, when people are using Bitcoin for money and paying for stuff online or paying, for stuff in the real world, they're using Lightning. A lot of these, like, shitcoins, they are wash traded, and, like, volume, you can't really trust the volume. So I would be skeptical of it. But, I mean, SideSwap's good. Is it SideSwap? Sideshift. There is something else called SideSwap. Sorry, SideShift. Yeah, that's the liquid thing, which I thought was pretty cool. I downloaded it. It worked really well on my computer. But Shapeshift was Eric Voorhees? Yeah. Was a very useful service, and a lot of us back in the day when shitcoins weren't, shitcoins, we scored some shitcoins using Shapeshift. Swapping services are very important. In LNBits, we're very lucky that we have DNI, who works on LNBits. He also works on Bolts. And Bolts is another, I suppose I can't really talk about competitors of your sponsor, but...
It's not competition because they have Lightning.
Yeah, there we are. So they do they do swaps from Lightning to on-chain to Liquid. And it's really useful. We've actually just... Jack Starr, one of our developers who works on LNBits stuff sometimes, he built the node management solution, actually. Bright developer. I think we're all going to know that name at some point. He's only yesterday I got a message from him on Telegram. He's created, so for those of you who don't know, LNBits can sit on top of any Lightning funding source. So LND, Eclair, Core Lightning, OpenNode, whatever, just custodial, non-custodial, whatever. Because I was annoyed at having to build like several different versions of every project I made, because they've all got different APIs, REST APIs, which I'm building that project for. So you need a common API, sits on top of a funding source, and I just develop for the common API. And there's, so a couple of things we've had happen in the past couple of weeks is we've got someone working on Nostr Wallet Connect, which is really useful for that purpose of connecting funding sources to applications. The other thing is Jackstar yesterday sent me a message and said he'd finished the Boltz funding source. And this is crazy. So if you think of Aqua Wallet, if anyone's used Aqua Wallet before, it means that you could have a liquid balance in liquid wallet. You can spend and send Lightning. But what happens is an instant auto swap in and out to liquid. But it means that, so you could essentially run an LNBits and then you could connect the Boltz funding source, and then your actual balance for your LNBits install is in liquid. And then it's just when payments come in and out. So I think the swapping services are very, very important. Currently, I think the transaction fee for that is probably about 100 sats or something. It's quite high. But Michael from Boltz has told me that he's going to get it down to about 40 sats, which then becomes nominal when if you're buying a beer or something. And it's a nice way for us. We want to offer, the ability for someone to run our software on, easily. So we want to be able for them to be able to spin up an LNBits install, which we do with our software as a service. But then we don't want to be custodians of funds. So what we can do is they can fund their LNBits install with Liquid, which is kind of cool. And then the other solution as well is something like Blink, which is Galoy's project, Phoenix D, which is a managed Lightning node. I mean, Phoenix D, like the Eclair thing, Phoenix D, Greenlight as well from Blockstream. Those managed Lightning solutions, if only they'd existed like 3 years ago, it would have made everybody's lives a little bit easier for running their Lightning nodes on their Raspberry Pis and things. So, yeah, it's amazing. Like, there's been this like Cambrian explosion of solutions for Lightning Network and ways of using Lightning Network, but they've all kind of come during that little bear FUD cycle which has happened for whatever reason. I think probably perpetuated from the capital in Ecash. But then also, from people's nodes being bought from on-chain fees. Anyway, lots of good things have come out of the past year.
Yeah, and speaking of good things, one of the other sponsors of the show is Starkware, which is a company that's building ZK rollups. Right now they're on Ethereum, and they require Opcat to be able to build that on Bitcoin. And their message for the listeners is consider activating Opcat because they can offer pretty cool. It's a very nice cryptography that offers transactions just like Zcash, but without the trusted setup. So it's private, it's pretty scalable. It's really nice. It's a very interesting advancement in cryptography. It's different from what we have. I think Bitcoiners are stuck in this mindset where everything has to be done with blockchains or side chains or layers on top. It's something else, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like ZK rollups.
I was going to ask you what you think about covenants.
Yeah, I mean, the ZK rollups and Zcash, like, it's a shame that Zcash acted so shitcoiny because it's a good concept, and and hopefully we will have Zcash on Bitcoin, ZK rollups. Yeah, and it's probably with Drivechains, yeah. Eventually, I imagine, if not that thing, something like that thing will happen. I mean, this is the worst thing any Bitcoiners can do, to say, I can define what Bitcoin is. I don't think anyone can define what Bitcoin is. We can speculate as to what Bitcoin is right now, but we can't speculate as to what it will become in the near future or the future. So never say never. And there's some great minds working on solutions which we could totally use in Bitcoin. Covenants being one, for example. They open up, unlock a whole bunch of new potential ways of engaging with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network as well. So I'm very positive. I'm positive for all the stuff. I just want experimentation, computer science, best ideas will rise to the surface. But I'm in general, I think there's a lot of good growth on Bitcoin. But yeah, it's covenants are cool. We need more computer science and more work done on them.
Yes, and something interesting about these ZK Starks is that they can enable someone to just verify ZK proof, and that's how they operate their node. They can basically sync up in 1 second, And this can be very useful for mobile wallets. Yeah. You don't need to use the Electrum servers anymore to leak your XPub to someone else. You get that initial sync very fast, and then scalability doesn't become a problem anymore. Or the growth of the blockchain is not that much of a concern because you can have this. So it's very interesting. And also this show is sponsored by Layer 2 Labs. Thank you, Paul. Good luck with Drivechains and everything else. Because it's a very polarizing topic. I like it. I think it's useful for Bitcoin. I think the people at Litecoin are going to try it first. And I think that's a good way to prove that some of the FUD is not legit. Because Litecoin, I think, has an issue with mining centralization, which is more obvious than Bitcoin. They have more Chinese miners securing the network. And they also have a leadership structure. You know, they have a foundation, they have a founder who's public. So it's easier for them to make decisions. But at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see if you get the MEV and all of the other stuff that Bitcoiners are so concerned about, or if the miners will steal, because that's another big topic. If that's really going to happen, or the users can organize to do a UASF, user activated. Yeah, I don't want to say USAF. That's the U.S. Air Force. I think they made this acronym on purpose, right?
I think so. But no, so Lightning arguably might have not happened. SegWit arguably might not have happened had Litecoin not done it first. So yeah, like it makes sense that there is some proof that this thing can work and exist, and it doesn't make the project explode, which is the worry. And I get the worry because there's a good analogy that when you're operating on Bitcoin, you're operating on like a Boeing 747 flying through the air, and like you're operating while it's in service, while it's in the air. Like if you break it, it's fucked. And so we do need very conservative development and lots and lots and lots of testing because there's always unforeseen unknowns, you know. But like when you have a proposal and it's very polarizing, it's that dialectic. Like someone suggests an idea, people have an antithesis to the idea, and then you have a synthesis of ideas. And there's probably some good in this thing, and there's some valid concerns from this thing over here, and then over time, everything gets better, and that's generally just how stuff improves: software, humanity, everything. So when it comes to something like Drivechains, for example, like one of the coolest things is it really highlighted how centralized mining is, and that like work by things like Stratum V2 are very, very important. Like if we manage to decentralize mining to a certain point, people would have far less criticism. Like Matt Corello, he's like, yeah, no, nice proposal, but not while mining so centralized. I'm not even going to look at it. And that's true. Like you shouldn't look at it until you sort that problem first. And then once you've sorted that problem out, then, this thing might be on the table. Or maybe there's some other way in which you can do it. Or maybe it's a sacrifice people are willing to make. But yeah, I think both sides are valid, and then some dilution of those ideas will work into whatever the best solution is for Bitcoin. Yeah.
That was a rather diplomatic answer, but
Everyone's right.
Everyone brings a contribution that's useful. That's something that is not discussed very often. We like to be tribal and say, no, this one is the true scaling solution, the only one on which we should focus. And I think we should have a short conversation about Cashu also. But before that, the fourth sponsor, and this is the last one, I promise. That one is... No, I haven't forgotten. I looked at my girlfriend and she was laughing at me. So, sorry guys. So it's hodling.ch. They're a company from Switzerland and they deal with self-custody. So if you don't know what to do with your 1,000 Bitcoin, or you're part of this company that wants to start buying Bitcoin and you want to set up a multi-sig and you want to have this more sophisticated setup than just the seed phrase, you can call these guys or send them an email. They benefit from that Swiss privacy, that confidentiality, so they don't reveal to their government that you're their client. And check out their service at hodling.ch. They'll tell you which hardware wallets to use if you need them and stuff like that. It's basically consultancy, hodling.ch. But Cashu, it's the most popular implementation of Chaumy and Ecash. I love Kale. I was next to him when he was in a bar in Riga and he was babbling about Chami and Ecash, and the next week he coded, basically, what became the backbone of Cashu. I thought that was nuts, and he turned that into his logo. But my point is right now that even though I love him and I think it's interesting, it defeats the purpose of what Bitcoin is and why I got into Bitcoin in the first place. And it's being advertised as this scaling solution, which also has some privacy for custodial wallets. It promotes custodians, and to me, that defeats the purpose. It makes me want to not ever touch that. What do you think about Ecash and Cashu and all of this? Do you think it's going to help Lightning scale?
So, Ecash is very powerful, very important technology, and it's cool that there's this amazing permissionless development environment where people are building all this interesting computer science. As a caveat, Kali he works on LNBits and he created Cashu. Cashu he took the fake wallet funding extension, which we use for testing and things, and you can use for some other funky stuff, which I won't go into. And then that was part of from what I understand, it was Cashu at that point when he MVP'd it. It was kind of a chopped up LNBits. So it definitely came out of the womb of the LNBits ecosystem, and we were all very positive for the reception it had. That people were talking about Ecash and using Ecash, and there's some funky things you can do with Ecash, some good things you can do with Ecash. And I think there's a lot of use cases for it as well, like loads of use cases, API calls, whatever else, like paid API calls. I think Ecash is very powerful, very useful. However, in Bitcoin, the game theory on something like Lightning Network is very sort of well analyzed before we start to think about it as a serious scaling solution. And I feel that with Ecash in general, like, who's going to run mints? Like, this is the problem. Like, who's going to run mints? Like, if you're running a mint, you're effectively producing currency. And generally, people don't like it when you produce currency. Bitcoin kind of slips through and is an exception to the rule. And some shitcoins as well in a lot of jurisdictions. Because there is no trusted third party to kind of attack, really. Like, how do you attack it and stop it? Whereas with Cashu, there is that trusted third party. There is that thing producing currency, and you can say, well, it represents Bitcoin. It's pegged to Bitcoin, and it's not pegged to Bitcoin. I bought a beer in the conference. It doesn't mean the beer is pegged to Bitcoin. I just bought the beer with Bitcoin, and it's similar with Ecash. There's no proof of reserves. There's no real good solution for proof of reserves. So I understand the game theory for users, and I don't want to dismiss Ecash, but I have concerns. So I understand the game theory for users, more privacy. If you're using a custodial solution, why would you not want more privacy from the custodian? Well, in saying that, unless you have an issue and a bug, and you feel that you've lost funds, and then you turn around and you try and prove that to the custodian, and you can't because you don't have any sort of, there's not that double entry bookkeeping of them keeping a copy of the transactions and you keeping a copy of the transactions. We have it all the time in LNBits. Like, users will say, well, this didn't seem to happen. It's the concern of something like Monero. When you have privacies, you can have things like inflation bugs, and they're very hard to mitigate against. Anyway, so I get the game theory of the users. If you're using a custodial solution, having some privacy is nice. But then I kind of feel if you're using a custodial solution anyway, I'm not sure that maybe, you're less worried about privacy. I'm not sure, because you're using a custodial solution. Now, what I don't get is the game theory for mints. Who's going to run the mints? They're not going to be regulated bodies. It's going to be a dark market of mints. It's like, okay, we live in this cypherpunk utopia where there's this dark market of mints, and we can trust the mints because they're getting yield and via fees through the mints. But can you really trust those mints? Like, would you want to store your funds on a dark market? Because that's essentially what you're doing. So it's like, so then you have the Fedi bunch, and they say, okay, well, we'll federate it. We'll federate the mints. Someone's holding your Bitcoin, and if they're holding your Bitcoin, which you've sent into the system, they can spend it from underneath you. They can inflate the supply, and it's very hard for there to be checks and balances against that. Like, if you look at Liquid's a really good example. So regardless of, what some people believe, like, Blockstream have done a lot of good work on keeping the Liquid Federation honest. If you join the Liquid Federation, a guy gets on a plane. Well, first they make sure that you're not too geographically located to another member of the Federation. Then a guy gets on a plane with a little box of custom hardware for you to become a functionary on the Federation, because their whole business model of Liquid is based on the fact that that Federation remains honest. It's an expensive and it's a hard thing to make a Federation honest, not get Sybil attacked. I'm not sure that's going to happen if people are just spinning up federations here, there, and everywhere. The concept of, community banking, we work on LNBits, we were the first ones to recognize that Lightning was hard to work on, so you've got the Uncle Jim model that you spin up an LNBit so that people can make use of it. But we design it in such a way that everybody can run it and install it themselves. That's the point. When it comes to things like community banking, in my village in Wales of 200,000 people, I'm not sure there's maybe 3-4 people within that village who could realistically run and operate a Lightning node at this current point in time successfully. So how can you expect some community which have far less technical knowledge, access to reliable internet, access to reliable IT infrastructure, how can you expect them to be able to run a federation of Chomini Ecash mints? So I'm very skeptical. And I think that people kind of dove in too quickly to say this is a solution because Chomini Ecash is cool. And this is the thing, I don't want to discourage work on it because I think the work on it is important. But I think there's some fundamental assumptions to the whole premise which could undermine the work they're doing in that, who's running the mints? What's the incentives for those people running the mints? And that game theory really needs to be analysed properly before people put all their eggs in one basket. And, as I said before, I really don't like it's kind of like an easy bit of FUD to push the use case and the importance of Ecash by pushing down the good work which has been done on the Lightning layer, which, as I said, is 5% done. There's another 95% of the work to be done. So when it comes to Ecash, it's great. Carry on doing the work. Be a bit more skeptical. Understand some of the limitations of it. It's not a panacea, as we've seen with Lightning Network or whatever. Nothing ever is a panacea in Bitcoin. But I do think it's going to be an important part of our future world's economy. Whether it runs on Bitcoin or not, I don't know. But I do think it's going to be an important part of our future world's future world's economy one day in the future. I mean, maybe, the USD, the digital currency USD decides to be an Ecash, federated Ecash. That could be cool. That could be better than the current version of USD that people use over Visa Network. It could have some privacy features. I'm not sure of the relevance on it on Bitcoin because, like you said, the whole point of Bitcoin is getting rid of trusted third parties. So let's not just give up and just say, okay, we're all going to be, it's let them eat cake, That for Marie Antoinette quote. Let's not do that.
I really like your answer because it's hard to not go crazy when you see so many people giving up and saying, this works. Why should we worry about decentralization and running nodes and stuff like this when you can just use Zcash? The rest of the world can use this. Maybe we can run the nodes. Maybe we'll stop at some point. It doesn't matter. But you did say something, and let me get you canceled right now with this question. You mentioned that there are some other cryptocurrencies that maybe get some leeway from regulators and then can get away from being overregulated, I guess, so they can experiment freely in this legal environment. And I was going to ask you, can you name 3 currencies that are not Bitcoin, that are not complete scams or shitcoins?
I mean, you are probably going to get me cancelled right now, but I mean, so Bitcoin's the main event. That's why I'm here. That's what I work on. But I like Monero. I think people use Monero.
It's easy to like.
It's useful for the people who work on Monero. Kind of cool.
Bitcoin was in the first
Yeah, exactly. And then also they are exploring some of the problems of having a private digital currency, like it's, things like inflation, for example. Litecoin, for its service it did to Bitcoin with the SegWit stuff. No. Oh, Mimblewimble. I mean, Mimblewimble, good computer science. Yeah, Litecoin. Yeah. So, Litecoin's another one. Yeah. Sorry, I already mentioned Litecoin. So there's my two others. I don't need a third other, do I? Christ, like anything built on something like Ethereum is a castle built on sand. And this is my worry of something like Ecash, is like you need to make sure the foundations make sense, or else all this wonderful work you're doing could be made redundant by the assumptions of the foundations being solid. And Ethereum is that. Like, there's some very interesting work by people exploring stuff, but the world likes NFTs. There's no way of getting around it. The world likes them, right? Maybe we're not the world, but everyone else seems to like them. Like, that gets explored over here on in Ethereum land. What I do like is when Bitcoin gets some new tool, that we get a lot of these creatives and people who've built solutions outside of Bitcoin come back to Bitcoin. I'm not even going to go near the ordinal space because I understand that's very controversial. But
you're already cancelled.
Yeah. Bitcoin for me, it's payments technology. Lightning is where I live. I like payment. I like making Lightning easy for people to run. I like making Lightning nodes easier to run, and exploring node management and then all the cool shit we can do with micropayments. For me, that's enough, and I can't be arsed with any of that stuff. However, I don't want to discredit the work that people, because the world's not binary. Obviously some things are. Like slavery's bad. But like the world's not binary in software in that. Some of these things will have some good in them, and they could filter into Bitcoin. We always said this, originally. If there's anything good which exists over there in the crazy, weird outland of shitcoinery, then eventually it will make its way into Bitcoin. If there's anything good or useful.
That's what Drivechains do, right?
Yeah. Bitcoin's not ready for Drivechains, but the discussion's been started. And for me personally, everything which happened with the No2X and whatever else, and the UASF, we decided to scale off chain. Like clever scaling, not just increasing block sizes. So that involves us having sidechains and layer 2s on top of Bitcoin, and that still to me makes sense as a value proposition. So I'm still invested in that. So that's the thing which I think we should be pursuing. But there's the fable of the there's a team, and they've been tasked with getting from one side of a forest, a jungle, to another, and they're really efficient, and they're cutting through this jungle, and they're doing really good work getting through the jungle. And just as they're at the destination, one of the guys at the back, he puts his hand up and he says, "Oh, wrong jungle." And I think that can happen. We can pursue something, do incredible work, and I'm not saying that work then becomes redundant, but we can pursue something, do incredible work, and then figure out we're just actually in the wrong jungle. It's the wrong, focus from the onset by making some incorrect assumptions. And going back to Ecash, that's kind of how I feel about the Ecash stuff, I think.
You work on LNBits and you work on Nostr. So for someone listening who maybe they know about this, but they never used it, what's the best place to start? What should they download? What should they access or run?
I would also like to say, disclaimer, none of my views are the views of people held within the Nostr community, free and open source project, project. So it's some of my views which may be a little controversial, weirdly controversial in Bitcoin land. I mean, you've had this flack as well, like if you want to explore some of the other ideas out there which aren't quite on script with the political ideology of the time in Bitcoin, you can get flack for it. None of those they're not from LNBits, they're just from me, okay? But LNBits gets an account system which you can run on a Lightning node, and it has all these amazing extensions, and we make it easier and easier to install. You can, if you go to LNBits.com, it's a link to the repo, link to the, we have like a SaaS, software as a service solution to make it easy to spin up LNBits. It's a good place to experiment. And with Nostr, if you go to nostr.org, there's links to the repo, the Nostr repo, and then also links to, there's a video on there which explains a little bit more about Nostr. And then if you scroll down at the bottom there's a whole bunch of links to different clients you can run on your phone or laptop or whatever. So yeah, Nostr's amazing, and LNBits is amazing. And I feel very privileged to be able to work in those ecosystems and create stuff. And also MakerBits as well. So MakerBits is kind of like the hardware side of a lot of what we do. There's a MakerBits Telegram group, and there's a MakerBits YouTube channel. And that's just us like hardware dorks, experimenting with hardware, making ATMs, points of sale, cheap signing devices, hardware wallets, those sorts of things.
And also the Bitcoin Takeover magazine, which is in the LNBits shop. Get that one. Shop.lnbits.com. Last question, Ben. You work on a lot of stuff, and you're very enthusiastic and very productive. All the time, I'm jealous sometimes. When I see how much you accomplish in 1 year, I feel like I haven't done much with my life. And my question for you is, what do you currently work on? And what do you think you're going to finish by next year when maybe we do another interview?
Again, I lean very much on the very talented people around me. And quite often with like developers and people building stuff, they don't care about this limelight or anything. Like they're just building cool things. So all too often, because you know, I'll do the video tutorials for something, people will assume that I've done all the work, and I really try and like give props to everybody. Like it's, you know, 5%, 10% my work. So that's probably why I come across as producing a lot when really I'm not. Like all these other great people are producing work, and then I'm just doing the tutorial for it. So by this time next year, I want LNBits out of beta. I want it to be being run by some big institutions to manage their Lightning payments. Core to be completely hardened, LNBits core. The extensions, I want like 10 times as many extensions as we have now. More people to find it easy to build extensions. On the Nostr side, I want themed Nostr clients. I think that's very important. I think with Nostr, I won't go because I need to nip off in a second, so I won't get too much into this, but with the internet originally, people gravitated to sort of tribes and different interests they're into, forums, and they would find their community of, you know, if you're into like golden retrievers or I don't know, like the Band Oasis or whatever, they would find a forum with like-minded people. I think that with, but then what happened was the gravity of these big clients like Twitter and Facebook pulled the user network effect has all this gravity, which then pulls in all the other users from these forums, and the raw forums get stripped. Nostr, you can have both. You can have subject-specific themed clients where you still have access to the wider social graph of Nostr users. And I think that's really interesting. So I want to see more like themed clients. That's something I'm quite excited to kind of, I think it will naturally evolve and happen.
It's beautiful how you ended at the same time as the guitar player stopped. Very beautiful, poetic. Thank you very much, Ben. Good luck accomplishing everything that you want. And I look forward to using LNBits and seeing all the new extensions and everything that was built in the background that works better, and I'm not even aware of it. So thank you for all of your work and all the work of your contributors, because you created this very nice community of developers.
Cool. Thank you, Vlad. And can I just say as well, thank you Vlad, for all the magazines are incredible. I'm in awe of you. I'm like, how can one person produce like something equal to, you know, a big company which has lots of writers and contributors? So I think you're very productive also. You shouldn't undersell yourself there. And then also, for all the work you do to get on all these different fringe Bitcoiners, like your job is you're a chronicler of Bitcoin and its journey. And part of that involves interviewing people who some people within the Bitcoin community might not like. And that's okay. They have a unique perspective, like, which is valid, and so it's all good stuff. Just continue what you're doing. Don't let the maxi trolls or whatever get on you too much. Like, it's good stuff. I really enjoy your content, so keep it up.
Thank you very much. there are not too many people who appreciate what I'm doing, but you said I do the work of an entire company by myself when I write magazines. My girlfriend just told Thomas Hunt, Matt Bitcoins, this morning that I wake up in the morning, I work, I maybe take an hour break to go out with her, have ice cream or something, take a walk, and then go back, work again, and go to sleep. And she's a medicine student, so she can understand me because she also studies a lot. So that's why we function. But there's a lot of work into this, and not too many people appreciate it. But thank you for noticing and being a supporter of my work. And buy that magazine. Go to shop.lnbits.com. Thank you, Ben.